From the moment Emily could remember, her life looked like something out of a family magazine. She lived in a quiet little town where everyone knew each other's names. And her parents were the kind of couple people whispered about, not in gossip, but in admiration. Her father was always neatly dressed, polite to neighbors, and quick to offer help when someone's car wouldn't start. Her mother baked cookies for school events, volunteered at the library, and seemed to know exactly what Emily needed before she even asked. To the outside world, they were the definition of a happy, safe family. Emily's days were carefully structured, breakfast at the same time every morning, walks to school with her father, and homework done before dinner. There were no loud arguments in their home, no broken plates or slammed doors. Just a steady rhythm that made Emily believe nothing bad could ever touch them. Other children sometimes envied her for how perfect her family seemed. But Emily noticed something they didn't. The perfection felt rehearsed, almost like her parents were working very hard to keep it that way. There were small, almost invisible signs that something was different about her life. For one, her parents rarely allowed her to play outside without them watching. Birthday parties at other kids' houses were almost always met with a gentle but firm, "Maybe next time, sweetheart." When she'd ask why, her mother would smile but avoid giving a real answer, simply saying, "We just want to make sure you're safe." At the time, Emily accepted it. She thought it meant she was loved. Her friends would tell her about their vacations, trips to amusement parks, visits to big cities, camping in the mountains. Emily's family never traveled far. If they did go somewhere, it was always to a small cabin by the lake, far away from crowds. And always during off-season, when no one else was around. Her father would spend hours staring out the window at the tree line, his eyes darting at any movement, while her mother kept the curtains drawn at night. Emily noticed these things. But she was too young to understand them. Even at school, there was something unusual. Whenever the class had to bring in baby pictures for yearbook projects or family trees, Emily's parents would send a single, carefully chosen photograph, a picture of her as a toddler, sitting in the grass with a sun hat pulled low over her face. There were no photos of her as a newborn, none of her first birthday, none of her early years. Whenever she asked where they were, her parents would exchange a quick glance before her father answered. They were all lost a long time ago. Emily never pushed for more, but a quiet, unshakable curiosity began to grow inside her. As Emily grew older, the rules in her home didn't just remain, they multiplied. There were curfews that no one else in her neighborhood had to follow. She had to be home before sunset, no matter the season, and her parents insisted on picking her up from school every single day. Even when she protested that she was old enough to walk with her friends, their answer was always the same: "We're just being careful." Careful about what? They never said. One of the strictest rules revolved around the basement. It had a heavy wooden door with a shiny brass lock, and Emily was told from the time she could talk that she was never to open it. "That's where Dad keeps important work things," her mother would say. But her father's important work was supposedly just accounting. Why would an accountant need a locked basement? Sometimes Emily would hear faint noises from down there late at night, like drawers sliding open or the click of a camera. When she'd ask about it, her father would brush it off, just organizing old files. There were other odd restrictions that made even less sense. Emily was never allowed to look through the family photo albums on the living room shelf. Not that there were many. The few albums that were there only contained pictures from when she was about 5 years old onward. Anything earlier was missing entirely. If she lingered too long, flipping through the pages, her mother's voice would cut through the room. Gentle but firm. "Let's put those away for now." And if she ever tried to sneak a peek when her parents weren't around, she'd find the albums mysteriously gone the next day. Even medical visits were strange. Emily could never see a doctor alone. Both her parents would accompany her, sitting in on every checkup, answering most of the questions themselves. Once, when a nurse casually asked if she had any past surgeries, her father's tone sharpened as he cut in before Emily could answer, saying, "No, she's always been perfectly healthy." The nurse looked at him oddly, but didn't push. Emily noticed her mother's hand resting tightly over her father's, almost as if silently telling him to calm down. Then there was the rule about strangers. If anyone came to the door unexpectedly, a delivery person, a neighbor, even the mailman, Emily was told to go upstairs immediately. Her father would handle it, and her mother would watch from the window until the person was gone. Sometimes, Emily caught a glimpse of their expressions afterward, pale, tense, and watchful, as if they weren't just guarding their home, but guarding her from something she couldn't yet understand. It was on a gray, rain-soaked Saturday afternoon that Emily first discovered the attic's secret. She'd gone up there searching for an old set of art supplies she was sure she'd stored years ago. The attic was dim, smelling faintly of dust and something older, almost metallic. Boxes were stacked haphazardly, some labeled neatly in her mother's handwriting, others left completely unmarked. As the wind rattled the windows, Emily's flashlight beam swept across a small, dented tin box tucked behind a stack of winter coats no one had worn in years. Something about the way it was wedged back there made her pause. Pulling it free, she noticed it wasn't just dusty, it was sealed shut with a strip of brittle masking tape. Her heart gave a small jolt. Why would anyone tape shut a box and hide it like this? Peeling away the tape, she opened it to find only a few items inside. An old rattle, a faded hospital wristband, and a crumpled envelope with a hospital logo on it. Her hands trembled slightly as she pulled out the envelope. It wasn't addressed to Emily at all. The name printed neatly across the front was Ethan Carter. She froze, her breath caught in her throat. The handwriting on the envelope was unfamiliar, sharp, and deliberate, as though the writer had been trying to make each letter perfectly clear. Emily turned the envelope over in her hands, looking for any other markings, but there was nothing. The strangest part wasn't just the name, but the birth date printed beneath it. It matched hers exactly. Same day, same year, same hospital. Her fingers felt suddenly cold as she stared at it. Curiosity overpowered caution. She slid the letter out and unfolded the yellowing paper inside. It was a hospital discharge document, but every reference to gender and certain details were blacked out with thick permanent marker. Only the name Ethan Carter remained untouched. It was signed by a doctor whose name she didn't recognize. The more she stared at the document, the more it felt like a missing piece from a puzzle she didn't even know existed, and the piece didn't seem to fit with the life she'd been told was hers. Emily dug deeper into the tin box, but there was nothing else except a small photograph so faded it was barely visible. She could just make out a bundled newborn wrapped in a blue blanket, the face turned slightly away from the camera. The photo had no date, no writing on the back, just the image and an eerie sense that she had stumbled onto something she was never meant to find. Outside, thunder rumbled like a warning. But Emily was too distracted by the name Ethan echoing in her mind. Emily sat cross-legged on the attic floor, the letter and the faded photograph lying in front of her, like pieces from a stranger's life. The name Ethan Carter repeated in her mind until it almost didn't sound like words anymore. She'd never heard her parents mention anyone by that name. It wasn't the name of a cousin, a neighbor, or any family friend she could recall. And yet, the birth date on the letter matched hers exactly, not just the day and year, but the exact time written in the margin. The coincidence was too perfect to be random. She remembered her parents telling her the story of her birth. Countless times how her mother went into labor during a snowstorm. How her father barely made it to the hospital in time. How they held her for the first time and just knew she was their little girl. But now, those memories felt like fragile glass, cracking under the weight of this new information. If the hospital records belonged to someone else, then what exactly had happened the day she was born? Or worse, what if she wasn't the person she thought she was at all? Her mind started racing, replaying every odd detail of her life. The missing baby photos, the overprotective rules, the strange restrictions about doctors. They weren't random quirks of overcautious parents, they were signs. Signs of something carefully hidden. And if the truth had been hidden for this long, it couldn't be something small or harmless. Her stomach twisted with a slow, creeping dread. Emily's fingers trembled as she picked up the photograph again, bringing it closer to her face. The baby's features were faint in the fading light. But there was something hauntingly familiar about the curve of the mouth, the shape of the tiny hands. It was as if she was looking at a memory she couldn't recall, like the image had been burned into her subconscious long before she'd ever seen it. She felt a strange pull toward it, a quiet certainty that the child in the photo wasn't just anyone. The attic suddenly felt smaller. The air thicker, as if the walls themselves knew a secret she wasn't supposed to uncover. A loud creak from the stairs made her jump, shoving the letter and photograph back into the tin box. Her heart pounded as she quickly slid it behind the coats again, but the weight of what she had just discovered didn't go away. The name Ethan stayed lodged in her mind, refusing to be forgotten, and with it, the terrifying possibility that her entire identity might be built on a lie. That night, Emily lay in bed, staring at the ceiling as the storm outside drummed against her window. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the name Ethan Carter in the hospital letter's neat black print. Sleep was impossible. Questions piled up in her mind until one thought rose above the rest. If the attic held one secret, the basement might hold the rest. For as long as she could remember, the basement had been off limits, the one place in the house her parents guarded more than anything else. And now, she couldn't ignore the feeling that whatever was down there would explain everything. The house was silent except for the steady patter of rain. Emily slipped out of bed, her bare feet cold against the wooden floor. She tiptoed to the hallway, pausing every few steps to make sure her parents were still asleep. The basement door loomed at the end of the hall, its brass lock glinting faintly. In the dim light, her father usually kept the key in his study desk, and after a tense, quiet search through the drawers, she found it small, heavy, and ice-cold in her palm, as though it hadn't been touched in years. Her hands shook as she slid the key into the lock. The click of it turning sounded far too loud in the stillness. She hesitated for a moment, listening for movement upstairs, but nothing stirred. The door creaked open, releasing a faint, stale smell of dust and paper, mixed with something sharper, disinfectant. She stepped onto the first wooden step, the sound of her heartbeat thundering in her ears. A single bulb hung at the bottom, casting a pale trembling light that revealed rows of shelves. As she descended, she realized the shelves weren't filled with tools or holiday decorations. They were lined with neatly organized files, plastic storage bins, and unmarked cardboard boxes. The first box she opened held stacks of medical forms, hospital records, appointment slips, and prescriptions, all labeled with the name Ethan Carter. She rifled through them, her breath quickening as she recognized dates that matched her own childhood milestones, times when she thought she'd been to the doctor for routine checkups. But here they were under another name entirely. Then, she spotted a folder lying separately from the rest. Inside were photographs, dozens of them showing a baby boy growing older in each picture, until around age 3, when the clothes changed, the hair grew longer, and the name on the photo captions switched from Ethan to Emily. Her hands went cold. In the corner of the folder, a thick file stamped in bold letters read, "Patient, Ethan Carter, Witness Protection." Emily's pulse roared in her ears. Whatever she'd stumbled into, it wasn't just about a name, it was about a life that had been erased. Emily barely slept after what she saw in the basement. By morning, the air in the house felt heavier, charged with unspoken words. She sat at the breakfast table, her eyes fixed on her parents as they moved around the kitchen. They didn't seem to notice her staring, or maybe they did, and they were just pretending not to. Her mother's voice was unusually soft when she asked if Emily wanted more toast. And her father kept glancing at the hallway that led to the basement, as if he already knew she'd been down there. Finally, Emily couldn't take the silence anymore. The words came out sharper than she expected. "Who is Ethan Carter?" The clatter of her mother's coffee cup against the counter was immediate. Her father froze mid-step. For a long moment, neither of them spoke, and Emily felt the tension coil tighter with every passing second. Then her father let out a slow breath and motioned for her to sit down. "It's time we told you everything," he said, his voice low. What they revealed was nothing Emily had been prepared for. Years ago, before she could remember, her biological family had been in danger, not from illness or accident, but from people her father described only as dangerous men. He didn't give names, and his eyes flickered away whenever she asked for details. According to them, the threat had been so severe that federal agents had gotten involved. The solution had been drastic. They changed her identity completely, altering every official document, every trace of who she'd been before. That was the moment Ethan Carter ceased to exist, and Emily Carter was born. Her parents told her they weren't her biological parents at all, but a foster family chosen to keep her safe. They were told never to contact her real relatives and never to reveal the truth until it was certain the danger had passed. Emily's mother's voice trembled as she said this, her hands twisting in her lap. "We thought we were protecting you," she whispered. "We thought it was for the best." But Emily couldn't stop replaying the word danger in her mind, wondering what exactly they'd been so afraid of all these years. They admitted the basement was where they kept all the original documents and medical files in case the authorities ever needed them again. They had been instructed to destroy them once the case was officially closed, but they never did. Her father said it was because part of him knew she'd want to know the truth someday. Emily sat in stunned silence, her thoughts spinning. They'd given her a new life, but they'd also stolen the old one from her, and as much as she wanted to feel grateful, an unsettling question loomed in her mind. If the danger had really passed, why did they still look so afraid? That night, Emily sat alone in her room, the dim glow of her desk lamp casting long shadows across the walls. Her parents had gone to bed early. But she couldn't stop thinking about everything they had told her, and everything they hadn't. The name Ethan Carter felt heavier now, like it was more than just a name. It was an unfinished story, and she was somehow the main character without knowing the plot. She reached for the tin box again, the one she'd hidden under her bed after finding it in the attic. Needing to see the letter one more time, as she unfolded the hospital document. Something crinkled and slipped out from between the pages. A second, smaller piece of paper she hadn't noticed before. It was folded into a tight square, the edges worn soft from handling. Her pulse quickened as she carefully opened it. The handwriting was shaky, almost desperate, but the message was clear. Ethan, I found you. I'm coming. There was no signature, no date, just those chilling words scrawled in dark ink. Emily's eyes darted around the room, as if expecting someone to be standing there. The message could have been old. Or it could have been recent. Her mind flooded with possibilities. Was it from someone in her biological family? From the people her parents had been hiding her from? Or was it from someone else entirely? Someone who'd been watching her without her knowing? The thought made her skin prickle. She stared at the note for what felt like hours. Her fingers tracing the shaky letters over and over. The words had an urgency to them, as though the writer wasn't just informing her. They were warning her, or maybe promising something. Every creak in the house, every rustle of the trees outside, suddenly felt louder, closer. The wind rattled her window, and she swore she saw a shadow move across the yard. Disappearing behind the fence, heart-pounding, Emily shoved the note back into the tin box and pushed it deep under her bed. But she knew it was pointless. The words were burned into her mind. She didn't know who was coming. She didn't know if it was someone she should run to, or someone she should run from. All she knew was that, for the first time in her life, the danger her parents had feared didn't feel like a story from her past. It felt like it was right outside her door. Emily didn't sleep that night. Every sound seemed sharper, every shadow longer. At one point, she thought she heard footsteps outside her window. Slow and deliberate, but when she looked, the yard was empty. Morning came, pale and cold, but it didn't bring relief. Her parents acted as if nothing had happened, as if the world hadn't shifted under her feet. But Emily knew things could never go back to how they were. She carried the secret in her pocket now, folded tight and warm from her touch, the inked words burning in her mind. Ethan, I found you. I'm coming. She didn't tell her parents about the note. A part of her didn't trust them anymore. Not after all the years of lies. As she walked to school that day, she felt it, the distinct, undeniable sensation of being watched. She glanced over her shoulder, but the street was empty except for a man in a dark coat standing at the far end of the block. He wasn't moving. He wasn't looking away. Her pace quickened. The man didn't follow, but she could feel his eyes on her until she turned the corner. Emily told herself it was just paranoia. But deep down, she knew better. Somewhere out there, someone still knew her by a name she had almost forgotten, a name that was no longer just part of her past. And as much as she wanted to run from it, she couldn't shake the feeling that soon, Ethan Carter would have to face whoever was coming.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.